Today I'm going to give you an awesome guitar practice tip that's going to help you think through your toughest guitar playing problems and challenges, even the ones that feel impossible to solve right now. And as much as I want to take credit for this idea, I can't, because the original concept does not come from me. It comes from an unassuming genius billionaire that few people know. Everybody knows Gates, Buffett, Elon, and Bezos, but few people know this guy, even though he's one of the smartest and most rational thinkers of our generation. His name is Charlie Munger, and there's a process he uses in business to solve problems called the idea of inversion. And no, it's not about inversions of chords in music theory. To my knowledge, Charlie Munger is not a musician. In a nutshell, problem inversion is about thinking backwards to solve problems instead of just thinking forwards only. Say you're 5 years old and you're running a lemonade stand, but for some reason you're super ambitious for a 5-year-old and you want to build your lemonade business to $100 million a year someday. Probably going to be impossible for you to ask and accurately answer a question like, how do I build a business from 0 to 100 million? But if you instead ask the question the opposite way, how do I make sure that I fail? How do I make sure that I lose all my money, lose all my customers, and go bankrupt as fast as possible? Then brain dump all of those things and then simply avoid doing those things. Well, that's not going to be all the answers you need, obviously, but it's going to be much, much easier to move in the right direction once you avoid the things you know are going to guaranteed cause you to fail. That's problem inversion. So let's think about some of the most common guitar technique problems and challenges. Things like building guitar speed, getting your hands more in sync, getting your string noise under control, controlling excessive tension in your playing, making your fingers more independent, and making your technique more efficient overall. What you want to do is, for each of these goals, brain dump all the things that you know are for sure going to hurt your ability to reach these goals and guarantee that you'll never reach them. Like, for example, some of these can be really obvious, like never practice your guitar. And then from there, you'll eventually get into things that you know are real mistakes you should avoid, but you probably are making them. For example, if you're trying to make your picking hand more efficient, you should know, especially if you've been watching my videos for a while, that one of the mistakes to avoid is never looking at your picking hand and instead only looking at the fretting hand when you practice, which is something most people do. So you want to avoid never looking at your picking hand. Another example, if your goal is to clean up your playing and get rid of sloppy string noise, one of the things to avoid is only practicing with a clean tone or only practicing unplugged, because distortion is going to amplify your string noise mistakes and is going to allow you to fix them by focusing your mind on them. When it comes to building speed, some of your inversion items, things to avoid, would be not knowing what your threshold of control is. This is the fastest tempo you can play something with all the elements of your technique being perfect. That's a much different tempo than your overall gun to the head maximum speed. So not knowing the threshold of control is one, and then practicing way too slow compared to that threshold, far below that threshold, is another inversion element for your list. Practicing way too fast compared to the threshold is another element to put on your inversion list. What I love about this process is it forces you to think about the simplest things that most of us take for granted, like, for example, never practice your guitar when you're tired. That should be an inversion item on your list. Never fret notes on the pad of the finger, instead fret on the fingertip for playing scales and arpeggios, which you probably heard other people tell you when you were a beginner, but because you heard this so many times, it's so easy to just forget about those things, as most of us focus on learning the next shiny skill, the next scale, the next lick, or watching the next YouTube video, and never stopping to analyze what are all the negative things that you could easily stop doing at any time, and once you do, you'll improve faster. Say you're working on a lick you find hard to play. I'm going to show you one that I've been working on recently. And when you reach a point where you can't play the lick as fast as you want, instead of asking the typical forward-leaning questions to which you probably don't have all the answers right now, think backwards, invert the questions like this. Why isn't my playing faster or cleaner or more consistent or more relaxed than it is right now? What do I think is causing me to be stuck at this tempo but not at a tempo that's 20 or 30 BPM slower? What am I noticing as I reach my fastest tempos, as far as how the notes sound or how my body feels or how my playing feels overall, that I'm not noticing at the slower tempos I start at? Or conversely, what am I not noticing at slower tempos that I am noticing at the higher ones? What you're doing here is you're inverting the basic question of how do I get the damn thing faster, which is what you wanted in the first place, but you're thinking about it in a 360-degree way, forwards and backwards and even side to side, to give your brain new ideas for how to begin solving this problem. That's where the value is. And what's really important when you ask questions like this is you give yourself useful answers. So don't just give yourself stupid one-word replies like, what do I notice at the higher tempos? Pfft, the notes are faster or the notes feel harder. That is useless. You can't act on that. You want to give yourself actionable things you can think through and see if you can tweak your technique or practice in a different way to begin making your playing better. And in the case of the lick I showed you, when I asked myself, what am I noticing or what's harder at the higher tempos that's not happening, or what is easier at the slower tempos? One of the answers I came up with is I'm losing control and consistency of my picking motions on strings 4, 3, and 2, right here. So if the problem is in my picking hand, the things that I know from my inversion list that are going to hurt me are not looking at my picking hand, not even knowing what the motions are for the picking hand, and not separating the hands. So guess what? That's exactly what I did. I started looking at my picking hand, I separated the hands, and spent some time just figuring out what exactly my pick was supposed to be doing without doing anything with my fretting hand. And what I found is I did not know the picking hand motions as well as I thought I did. But by separating the hands and by spending 5-10 minutes, I think I did, on just focusing on the picking hand motions and learning them at a deeper level, I was able to put the two hands together, and all of a sudden the lick felt easier to play and I could play it faster. Some of the other things you may discover by doing this inversion analysis is, for example, your hands get tired as you increase the tempos. And that could be a tension control issue, either in your hands or elsewhere in your body, or it could be that you're not hearing the notes clearly. That is probably an articulation issue or a mental processing issue where you're not able to hear notes past a certain tempo. Simply by asking these questions, you're going to get so much more clarity than you ever would by just moving your fingers up and down mindlessly. And this clarity over what not to do helps you decide what to do to solve your problems, or at least what approaches to try, such as what tempos do you practice at, how often do you increase the tempo, should you even use a metronome or not, what should you focus on while you practice, and so on. It all comes back to how you think. The better you are at thinking through problems, the faster you'll improve and the less frustration you'll deal with along the way. On that note, if you want some more help from me with building your guitar speed and you want to build speed without having to practice slow, hit the link in the description of this video or go to the page on the screen right now. I'm going to show you a free 1-hour masterclass called Guitar Speed Formula. What it is a new way to build guitar speed that doesn't make you start slow and gradually build speed in small increments, because that's a pretty boring way to practice, and more importantly, it's not really all that effective. If you want to know a new way to build speed, check out that link, enter your email address, I'll send you the video for free. And since this video has been all about avoiding things that are going to hurt you and what not to do and so forth, for change of pace, there's one thing you absolutely must do each time you practice, whether you do it for 5 minutes or 5 hours, doesn't matter. If you do this one thing, you're pretty much guaranteed to see solid, needle-moving progress each time. If you don't do this, it's going to be very, very hard for you to improve. If you want to know what that one thing is and how to do it, watch this video on the screen right now.